Mandukya Karika. Om Bhadram Karnebi Shinuyama Deva Bhadram Pashe Makshabhirya Jatra Sthirairange Sustuvagung Sastanubhi Vyashema Deva Hitan Yadayuhu Swasti na Indro Vriddhashrava Swasti na Pusha Vishwaveda Swasti nastakshyo arishthanemi Swasti no Brihaspatir Dadhatu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. So, we had some discussion on how real is real. We are discussing, and we saw that as far as the waking state is concerned, the external world is concerned, we pay too much of attention to it. We give too much of importance to it, and we think that external world is more real than the imaginary world, the world of imagination, particularly the dream world. And we have wonderful expressions in every language where this, if you have to mock at somebody, you use pipe dream and dream world and etc. But from the highest standpoint of Vedanta, and why is highest standpoint of Vedanta? From the highest standpoint as such, is it that the external world is more real than the internal one? So let's have a look at it. Because the purpose of Vedanta, is to present truth the way it is. It does not, it just does not try to cover up things. It doesn't try to polish things. So in the earlier verses, earlier shlok, we discussed space and causation. Now, when you think of this world, when you think of the world of mind, when you think of simply the world as we understand, three things are extremely important in this world if you want to understand it: time, space, causation. And this is Maya. Time, space, causation. There is space, as physics will tell, and physics says, and our own experiences, that there is causation, there are events. And when we compare two sets of events, which are similar, dissimilar, whatever it is, and you measure one particular event in relation to the other set of events, we say that this is the time lapse. And these are common sense also, and physics has given us a lot of knowledge about time. In every scripture, in every society, in every culture, you will find a lot of emphasis being given to time. Now, when we compare the dream state with the external, that is the waking state, or when we compare the internal world of thought with the external world of reality, as we say, we are saying reality. Let's see what Mandukya Karika has to say about it. One, one important thing that we find, one major difference, is in the factor of time. Looking from the standpoint of Mandukya Karika, it was explained how the idea of space that we have, say in the waking state, the same idea of space is in their dream state too. And what we see in dream is peculiar to that state. Earlier it was explained how if you go to the heaven, the description of heaven that we have in our scriptures, according to that, There are certain peculiarities, certain things specific to, say, heaven. Just like that, in the dream state, there are certain things specific to that state. So to say that the external world is more real, more important than the dream state is not right. Similarly, causation. We find how a person travels in space and experiences certain things during dream state. So these things have been discussed. We don't want to go into it once again. Time factor remains because intuitively we understand that whatever happens within our mind and what happens in the external world, they have a time lapse. This we will discuss in detail. But what exactly is time? As we mentioned in the beginning, that when we talk of time in physics, we compare one set of events with, say, another set of events. For example, supposing you are making tea, let's say, a simple example, and somebody asks you how long it will take. You say 5 minutes or 7 minutes, whatever time it may take. How do you measure those 7 minutes? Another event is taking place in your house, this clock. The hands of the clock, they are moving. And if it is at a larger scale, then, well, there is the motion of the planets, motion of the stars, and through that we compare things. At the smaller scale, is the clock. So there is an event involved where hand of the clock and both the hands of the clock are moving. And you are also performing some act. You compare the time lapse of your working with that of movement of the clock, and things can be calculated very easily. But supposing there was no clock, then it's a very interesting situation. Think of a condition when you have to go meet someone whom you really love, someone whom you have given time to meet, someone who is waiting for you, and both of you are extremely eager. Think of son of the family returning, maybe after a long gap from somewhere, and mother, parents, family, they're trying to reach the station and they know that the train will come at such a time. Now, when you're hurrying, you feel that time is time has shortened. And the person who is waiting now think the train has come and the sun has arrived. Or the person whom you want to meet, he has arrived, is waiting. Every few seconds he looks at the watch and says, oh, he was thinking that maybe 5 minutes have passed, but finds that barely 30 seconds have passed. And the person who is hurrying through is the reverse. You're running and you run for 10 minutes and you feel as if only 2 minutes have passed. And you say, oh my God, 10 minutes are already gone. When you're preoccupied, when you're exceptionally occupied, when you're intensely occupied, working on some project, you lose sense of time, which is a very common expression. You lose sense of time. So there are moments when you lose sense of time, and there are moments when you are extremely aware of time. So losing sense of time and being aware of time, it has something to do directly with your mind. And when we look at the clock or the watch against which we might be comparing, we find that time had slowed down, or for somebody, time was moving faster. It has nothing to do with what Einstein has been talking, say, in theory of relativity. It's a subjective perception, purely subjective perception. So ultimately, we find that when you become more aware of time, its eminence increases. And when you are not aware of time, its eminence decreases. Which means when you are continuously looking at the clock, that means your mind is aware of the flow of time. And because your mind is aware of the flow of time, it becomes extremely eminent. Its importance increases. Because its importance increases, you feel that a lot of time has passed, and yet it has not happened so. And when you're not aware of something, then just the reverse happens. It loses importance for you, it loses eminence for you. And this is what happens in the case of time. Uh, some of you might find it slightly difficult, but actually it's not difficult. And this awareness, eminence, these two things are extreme, deeply connected with our own existence. So when it was I was working on Kratu, I had worked out this thing, and in one of the chapters I discussed it in detail. It's a very interesting thing. It's not a concept, it's a truth. Now, whenever we want to bring some amount of objectivity, we keep some kind of clock, some kind of measure, be it mechanical clock, electronic clock. In earlier times, there used to be water clock, whatever it be. So, this external element regulates in the sense we compare our sense of time, subjective time, with the external. And we consider the external time to be more real than the internal time. So, who is giving importance to the external time? It's me who is giving importance to the external time. Think of a yogi who is meditating, say, maybe we have these stories who meditating for hundreds of years. For them, external time has no meaning, absolutely no meaning. Actually, we are giving importance to the external time. So, very clearly, there are two different types of mind, two types of time, subjective and objective. Shubhendu Bhattacharya is wonderful. Um, uh, Shubhendu writes, exam time passes quickly, but same time during period of wait appears longer. In fact, when I was writing a paper on time, I had used exactly this example where I had written from my own experience. When you are writing your exams, time seems to pass very fast, and for the invigilator, the time doesn't pass. So I was a student, and there itself I became a monk, and there were invigilator. So I was on invigilation duty. I was pretty young, and at young age, this just waiting is such a boring thing. And every few minutes I would go and look at the watch, but time never seemed to move. And I remembered how just a few years ago, time used to fly past when I was writing the exams. Wonderful. Yes, absolutely correct. So, is there any value of subjective time? When I was writing this on this paper, and it is a very interesting paper where time, mind, events, they all get coordinated in one single paper. I've not yet completed it. So I had showed it to one of our physics professors, and he said, Swamiji, we don't believe in subjective time. I didn't say anything because it was meaningless to say. But when you're talking about mind, everything becomes subjective. And he said that, look, for us, everything is objective. We need to compare, we need to measure, etc., etc., as people of science talk. They don't even realize how limited their understanding is of things. Anyway, each to oneself. Vedanta very clearly distinguishes subjective time and objective time. I gave you this example as an introduction, but it's very important because there is subjective time and there is objective time. Because, as we shall see, subjective reality and objective reality depend entirely on your understanding of time. If there is subjective time, we say that it is less real, it is imagination, it's a dream. And when there is an objective reality, as we say, and later we shall see how Mandukya Karika demolishes even that concept. It's an amazing work, I tell you, it's an amazing work. It's not really that complicated. If you just listen to everything and try to make a sense out of it, you'll find that it's extremely simple and logical. So it says time time is of two types. The expression used by them, imagine such an old book, and it's not Gaudapada who came up with this idea. This idea was already, he says, Chittakalik, the mind, the time which is limited and confined within the mind. Chittakalik. This is subjective. Of course, they don't use the term subjective. They have this very clear technical term, Chittakalik. Chitta means mind. And the time or event which are outside, they are termed dvikalik, dvayakalik, in two moments. Single moment is when it's in the mind, and two moments is when it's outside. It's not really two moments. It's the it's about cognition basically. And they say that when you perceive something, when you cognize something within your mind, the time that is lapsing can be confirmed or can be inferred only by your mind. So this is Chittakalik. The event is totally confined within the mind, and hence time is totally confined within the mind. But there are events that take place outside. For example, you and your friend, you go to a mechanic's shop, your car needs a repair, and later on somebody asks you, how long was your friend with you? And you say, till the car was getting repaired. Now there are two different events. One is car getting repaired, and there is your friend waiting. How long your friend was there till the car was getting repaired? How long it took the car to be repaired till your friend was there? So there are two things. You can say that there might be multiple. Does not matter. Two is as good. Whether it's two, three, four, it make no difference. Ultimately, it's about being one, which is within the mind, and being two, which is outside. The example that Vedanta uses is about milking. How long the person was there till the cow was getting milked. So how long was the cow milked till that person was standing there? So these are two different episodes. These are two different events. And these two different events are being compared with each other to create a sense of duality of two. So, with this idea clear, what is subjective time and what is objective time, now we try to look at the reality. We consider something to be more real if it has a witness. Those of you familiar with mystery stories, murder stories, detective stories would know that, and legal drama would know that police always looks for a witness. If you go to the court, Judge Sai will ask for a witness. Was there a witness? And a lot depends on witness. And when lawyers argue, they try to crack the defense put up by the witness. So ultimately, external reality is all about witness. How long the car was getting repaired? Till your friend was there. How long was your friend there? Till the car was getting repaired. So basically, one is the witness of the other. In Chittakalik, when the time is subjective, there is no witness. When they are using the term Chittakalik, Dvayakalik, what they mean to say that there is no witness, nothing more. With this, we start verse number 14. I'm sure it's clear to you. In case you have any difficulty, please ask, because the next one or two verses will depend only on this. Chittakalik, Dvayakalik. In very simple language, it's about witness. In the external world, we feel that there is a witness. And under normal conditions, we think that in the case of imagination and in the case of dream state, there is no witness. So it's Chittakalik. The event is totally confined within the mind. That is, the duration of the event is confined within the mind. But when it comes to external objects, the duration of the event is separated by two distinct events. चित्तकाला ही ये अंतस्तु द्वय कालाश्च ये बहि कल्पिता एवते सर्वे विशेषो नान्य हेतु ना अन्य हेतुकः. Say, very, very, very interesting shlok. It says that when we cognize something internally, it is only as long as the thought persists. That's why you will see that sometimes a thought comes to your mind when you're thinking or when you are dreaming. In dreaming, also the same thing happens. A thought appears and the event is there only till the thought is there. That means there is no witness as such. So thought and last, and those that are perceived outside and relate to 2 points in time. 2 points in time does not mean two different points. Essentially, it means there are two different events taking place and they relate with each other. The example that I gave you of the car getting repaired and your friend waiting there. So, are all mere objects of the imagination. So now what Gaudapada says, Kalpita eva te sarve. Whether the events be Chittakalik or the events be Dvayakalik, they are all imagined. How real is real? The way we understand real, it is as imaginary as the real, and imaginary is as real as the real. Real and imaginary, there is no essential difference. Because what it says that in dream state also, one has two types of perception. This perception that I've been doing something, someone else is watching, this happens in dream also. The only thing is, we do not have the patience and we do not have the time to cogitate over the dreams. You know, there is a tribe. I read it long ago. About a tribe where they have dream breakfast. Dream breakfast. So in that tribe, some African tribe, the family, when they meet for breakfast, they all talk about the dreams that they had. And they say that, well, dream state is as good as the waking state. Once I was talking to one of our very learned monks, and actually I'm extremely curious about dreams, extremely curious, because it's a gateway to many more things. It is gateway to madness, it is gateway to schizophrenia, and it is also gateway to deeper understanding of Vedanta. So this learned monk, this wise monk I was talking to, I asked him, how do you look at dream? And he said, as a learning experience. I was startled by his answer. A dream is a learning experience. For me, it's neither real nor unreal. It's just a learning experience. He said, I get lots of insight. He's a very thinking monk. And Yes, if you think of Kekule's dream and many other persons, in fact, even I personally, lots of my writings have come through certain insights that I got during dreams. So, dreams are best to be perceived as a learning experience and nothing less than that. What Gaudapada says, as far as dreams are concerned, and if you consider from the standpoint of time or events, so you think that an event took place till the time there was thought. So the subject and object they become one. And in case of the external world, as if there are two. No, nothing like that. They are all same. Because in dreams also you come across certain dreams where there are two, there are witnesses. In the rush of things, we seem to think that it is not so, but no. If you start analyzing your dreams, you will see that in dreams also, dvikalik, dvaikalik, the perceiving at two different points of time. Kal is time, dvaikalik, it is there. So you cannot say that there is any distinction between the external world and the dream world. अव्यक्ता एव ये अंतस्तु स्फुटा एव च ये बहि कल्पिता एव ते सर्वे विशेषस्तु indriyantare. So naturally the question comes that okay, fine, we agree that these are two same, but why is it that we feel that the external world is more real than the inner world? There's a very interesting shlok that Gaudapad gives us. It says, those, that is, events and objects that exist within the mind as subjective ideas and are known as unmanifested. The term is unmanifested. It's all inside unmanifested. And those that are perceived in the external world in a manifested form. When I think of this pen in my mind, it is unmanifested. When I see this pen in the external world, it is manifested. Says both are mere objects of imagination. The external world is actually an object of imagination. Their difference lies only in the difference of the organs by means of which they are perceived. How you perceive them, visheshastu indriyantare, is the organs of perception that make them appear different. Here we will need to understand a very simple faculty of the mind which is rarely discussed. Actually, you see, our education system is such, and even our training system is such that we don't dive deep. Now, as far as Hindu families are concerned, when we were young, when we were growing up in an Orthodox Hindu family, we had actually learned lots of things which were extremely meaningful, extremely philosophical. And now, when I study these scriptures and when I try to explain them, I realize that how these expressions had come to me and come to us, we kids, spontaneously. There was nothing very special about it. Like everybody knew this. So if you go and talk of these things in villages, people who have lived with this culture, they'll say, oh, well, it's so obvious. We know all this. It's very surprising, very interesting how in the rush of things we have been losing all this. Now, here is mind. If you try to understand what is mind, and what is the inner world and what is the external world, when we began with our idea of time, awareness and eminence, this is the characteristic of mind. Those of you who might have listened to our Raj Yoga talks would remember that chitta vritti is like ripples in the mind. Mind is like a calm ocean. Mind is like a calm lake. And there are ripples. And these ripples, one set of disturbance comes from the outside. Four sets come from inside. Can you imagine? Only one fifth of the stimuli, of all the stimuli, only one fifth come from outside. Four-fifth of them come from inside. Pramana viparya vikalpa nidra smriti. Through memories, through dreams, through imagination, and through delusion. Four out of five inputs to mind come from within, only one come from outside. And we consider this external world to be so important. And in religion also, they give lot of importance to both about it. Why? Because if inner world is important, why not external world? It's just something very obvious. Now, when that input comes, when that stimulus comes, mind really does not distinguish between external and internal. But what mind does is, because of its training, and that training has to be extremely specific. My training, that is training of my mind, is totally different from your training of mind. Depending on how you have been trained, that means what was your background, what was the environment in which you grew, and what kind of books you have studied, what is your treasure of knowledge, what kind of knowledge you carry in your head. All these things shape your personality. All these things shape your shraddha is the right term. And because of that, what happens, whenever you come across, say, an external object, let's say to give you a very crude example, think of your dear one, your extremely dear one, and think of that dear one having some kind of physical deformity. Now, it might so happen that that person's friends will address that person with deformity. Like in India, particularly people who are not really cultured, they tend to call people with deformity with such words, which is extremely unfortunate. However, persons who are close to that person and love, they will see that person as the beloved. Mother will see, oh, my dear son. Brother will say, oh, my dear brother. But people who are onlookers will say, oh, that lame person, that blind person, like that. Now, why is happening that your dear ones see in you something different, and those who are indifferent to you see you differently? It is their mind that adds that gives some add-ons, upadhi, add-ons. And this is true for all of us. Whenever we observe something, whenever we think something, whenever we dream something, these storehouse of our mind always supplies, always, without an exception, it supplies some add-ons. And it is through those add-ons that we perceive this world. When we say that try to be objective, we can never be objective. No person can ever be objective. Please mark my words. No one in this world, no one in the universe, not the gods, the small g, not the angels, no one can ever be objective in this world. It's just not possible, because anyone who has the mind will always have certain prejudices, good or bad. And those prejudices will always act as add-ons to the data coming to the mind, whether internally or externally. This is, not so difficult. You can understand it. Take the case of a sweet dish, rasgulla. Rasgulla is extremely popular in Bengal. or a chocolate, which is now popular all over the world. A kid, a kid looks at the chocolate, oh, wonderful, how he goes happy. And a diabetic person, an overweight person, he becomes, no, 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 don't bring that to us. Potato chips. Kids love potato chips. But those suffering from diabetic and overweight, they say, no, 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 I don't want that. For a diabetic, sweet is like poison. They'll say, don't bring that poison. Why? What is the objective reality? Rasgulla is Rasgulla. Then why a kid is becoming so excited and a diseased person says it's poison? Actually, this applies to everything that we experience. And that experience might be internal, that experience might be external. It makes no difference. Exactly just like that. When we experience something which is coming from delusion, imagination, memory, or dream, we we apply those add-ons. And things that come from outside, the add-ons are applied. Certain things coming through certain organs. When it is coming from the external organs, we just say that it is more important. When it is coming from the internal organs, we say that it is less true. The technical term for the storehouse is chitta, chitta, mind stuff. So Swami Vivekananda uses the term mind stuff. So chitta is the place for memory, and memory plays a very important role in Mandukya Karika. So what the mind does is it just gives the add-on, chitta kali. Same with time, present, past, future. Mind cannot distinguish a memory with something that is happening and an imagination. Mind cannot. It just applies to certain add-ons. And that add-on comes through training. So for a kid, for a young baby, the dream and the real, they are all same. And sometimes for them, dream is more real than the waking. And as we grow, we train our mind in such a way that the dream is less real. For example, those you might know of kids who were in the habit of bed waiting. They used to wet their beds in dreams. They would imagine that they are in front of some urinal or somewhere, and they are passing their urine. For them, it's all real, and the body acts in a real manner. And not only with that, there are hundreds of things. And as we mentioned that these real things, they have certain effect on the dream. Dream also has certain effect on the body. Bedwetting is a wonderful example of that. So you cannot say that this is more real and this is less real. Actually, what happens is that mind, depending on the kind of training it has received, it applies add-ons. So, so people who have studied science, for them, the knowledge bank that they have supplies certain add-ons, and they see this moon and star in certain way. And people who didn't have that kind of education, they perceive those things with, say, this purely, entirely religious setup. There's a beautiful story. I read it in some book. It was mentioned in the Sapiens book also. It's a very interesting story that when Apollo 11, that is, astronauts were ready to go to the moon. So, training, etc., the place where they had, there were some red Indians, and those red Indians wanted to meet those astronauts who were going to the moon. It's a very interesting story, but a true story. So anyway, they kind of agreed, and so astronauts said that, look, red Indians said in America that the moon is our God. When you go to the moon, could you please pass on one simple message to our ancestors who lived there. Red Indians believe that those who die, they go and live in the moon or on the moon. So the message was given in their language of the Red Indians. And the astronauts, they memorized that. And they were just curious to see what was the message that they had given. When translated into English, it was, don't you believe these people who have come to the moon, whatever they may say, scientific experiment, it is all about land grabbing. They just want to grab your land. I laughed and laughed when I read this because Red Indians, they have suffered so much in the hands of the Americans. And it's a fact. The present day Americans who teach lots of things to the world, they grabbed all the lands of the Red Indians, and now they live in reserve countries, and they have those reserve areas. And they were worried that now these people are going to the moon and they will grab the land on the moon for their own ulterior motive in the name of scientific observation, etc. Now you see, astronauts who were going, they had a very clear add-on of science and technology. And their purpose had a very clear add-on. And the Red Indians, who did not have this kind of training, they were seeing things from the religious prism, and their add-on was from the aspect of religion. And say they wanted to warn their ancestors that actually they are going to grab your land. Please be careful. So this is what Gaudapada says. Kalpita eva te sarve visheshastu indriyantare. This difference that we think of when we think of waking state as being more real, it's all because the organs involved are different. And because organ involved are different, we perceive things differently. Now later they will explain entirely how this entire process takes place. Now, dear listeners, some of you who have joined us late may say that you don't agree to all this, but my simple request is please listen from the beginning and everything will become clear. Gaudapada was an extremely logical person, and if he were not logical, Shankaracharya would have never written a commentary on his work. Shankaracharya, the most rational and logical person. I mean, we have only two persons, Swami Vivekananda and Shankaracharya, only two persons who went by hardcore reasoning. Hardcore reasoning. No other, no one else, none. Particularly anyone who writes poetry cannot be trusted because in poetry you use words, you use expressions which have to have different kinds of expressions and chanda and wordplay, etc. Now, both of them, Shankaracharya and Swami Vivekananda, they used prose. And prose is much more rational. And their approach is extremely rational. Whatever they are explaining, if you just listen to the talk from the beginning, whole thing will become clear. So, Acharya Shankar says beautifully, Indriyantara krita eva is a senses, is a senses through which some idea is coming that we consider something to be more real, something to be less real. As far as the thought itself is concerned, because for mind everything is a chitta vritti. For the mind everything is disturbance. Just imagine a lake. Think of a lake. And you throw a stone from outside and there are ripples. And a big fish moves and there will be a ripple. As far as mind is concerned, think of the surface of the surface of the lake having a mind of its own. How will it see? It will see everything as a disturbance. Think of a weighing scale. Think of a weighing scale. And whether you put gold on it or you put iron on it, it will just show the weight. Exactly like that. The surface of the lake It doesn't care whether thing comes from outside or from inside. Now, over the period, the character that we have acquired, and Mandukya will say, Smriti, the memory that we have, the treasure house of, the storehouse of, not treasure, storehouse of the memory that we have, it just jumps from within and puts an add on, and then it is declared as something. Very hard to believe, extremely hard to believe, but nevertheless, this is the truth. This is how the mind works, and this is how it perceives things. We truly make big of thinking external, external, and we make too big of science, 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 without realizing that the external is just as real as the imagined. There is no speciality about it, and science is just a method of knowledge, nothing more than that. And in no way it is superior to religion. Absolutely no way. And anyone who says being scientific, I understand the person has to be extremely shallow. He doesn't understand. If you are talking about rationality, that means A equal to B and B equal to C. So A equal to C. This is in particular set. This has to be true. Well, Hindu religion goes strictly by that principle. It doesn't go by belief. Other religions might be going, not Hindu religion. Then comes the bomb shell, number 16. It's a bombshell. जीवम कल्पते कल्पयते पूर्वम ततो भावान पृथक विधान बाह्य अनाध्यात्मिकांश्चैव यथा विद्यस तथा स्मृति. First of all is imagine the jiva. We will explain the term. What is jiva? The embodied individual. And then are imagined the various entities that make this world go, my life go. Both external, that is sound, etc., sound, sight, etc., and internal, such as the forces that work within prana, indriya, etc., that are perceived to exist. And as is one's knowledge, so is one's memory. Those of you who are interested in this subject, and many of you must be, otherwise, why would you be listening talk after talk? Just remember, Yatha Vidyas Tatha Smritihi. And our Priyanka Bhattacharya has written, here is that this last part, Yatha Vidyas Tatha Smriti. Oh, sorry. I'll just mark out. Yatha Vidyas Tatha Smriti. This blue mark you can see on the chat. Yatha Vidyas Tatha Smriti. As is your knowledge, so becomes your memory. Just now we were discussing this. From the standpoint of psychology, from the standpoint of yoga psychology, as is your knowledge, so is your memory. Now, smriti is a very interesting term. Smriti is not just memory. Smriti is much more than that. Smriti is all the knowledge that you acquired and the knowledge that you have applied. It's not only acquired, applied. Because when you apply some knowledge, you become master of it. Knowledge acquired and knowledge applied. In Vedanta, Smriti plays a very important role. Even in Gita, they will say that famous Dhyato Vishayan Pungsen, they say Smriti Bhramshad Buddhinasho. One who has lost his memory. Now, we are loosely translating Smriti as memory, but Smriti is not memory. Smriti is much more than that. Smriti is a storehouse of your memory. It is also the faculty to apply your understanding to distinguish between the right and the wrong. Smriti. Upanishads talk about ahar shuddho sattva shuddhi. Whatever you are taking, according to Acharya Shankar, if your food is okay, if you take sattvic food, then your mind will become pure. And if your mind becomes pure, your smriti, sattva shuddho dhruva smriti, your smriti will become perfect. Nothing can move you from the right smriti. Smriti is the right word. I mean, we use memory. Memory is not the right word. When we want to translate any of these technical terms, for example, science has now advanced so much, say biology and physics and computers. You cannot translate those words in Indian languages no more. We have crossed that state. Similarly, as far as Hindu religion is concerned, the concepts that we have in our scriptures, the Ved, Upanishads, and Puran, these cannot be translated. So, best thing is to explain the word. If you are just trying to translate, there will be trouble. So, Smriti is a general thing. No, here it says Yatha Vidyas, as we have marked in blue. Yatha Vidyas Tatha Smriti. Smriti is extremely important and knowledge is extremely important. So, some extremely foolish people keep on talking about why we need to study, and that Sri Ramakrishna also did not study. And somebody told Sri Ramakrishna this, you have not studied. Sri Ramakrishna said, oh, how much I have listened. When it comes to acquiring knowledge, whether you study or you listen, they are all same. You need to have knowledge. Anyone who doesn't have a thorough knowledge cannot expect to grow in spirituality. Now, if you come up with some solitary example of this prophet and that prophet, no, that's immaterial. Even they had some kind of knowledge about which we don't know. And if you have one exception on whom God made a very special grace for some purpose, that doesn't prove the law. Simply because one there is something happening, some exception, that doesn't mean that the entire thing will be like that. If you have a few raindrops falling on you, that doesn't mean that rainy season has arrived. For the rainy season to arrive, it has to be torrential rain day after day. Yatha vidyas tatha smriti. Priyanka has written Yatha vidyas tatha. There is actually sandhi involved. Yatha vidya. If you forget S and keep H there, Yatha vidya tatha smriti. As is your knowledge, so is your smriti. Knowledge plays such an important role in religion. People think that religion is about beliefs. No, religion is not about belief. Religion is about knowledge. Knowledge from the external world, knowledge from the inner world, and knowledge that you acquire through meditation, through samadhi. And now comes the explanation according to which the Lord, the Supreme Lord, that is Brahman, when he wants to create the Supreme Lord, he first imagines. What he imagines, we don't know what he imagines because at that time there was no mind. The Upanishads said, Ekoham bahusyam prajayami, I am one, I will be many, whatever it is. The knowledge that these great saints and sages and prophets had in the depths of their meditation, that is pure consciousness and the reality that when you make a sense, because consciousness has absolutely nothing to do with this inner world, and yet the entire thing has come from there. So it says the Supreme Lord starts imagining. The moment he starts imagining, first is born Jiva. That is the pure consciousness, the infinite consciousness, It now appears as, instead of being infinite consciousness, now it appears as infinite points of consciousness. There's a difference between creation and the state beyond creation. Consciousness is infinite. The reality is consciousness is infinite. When there is creation, infinite number of consciousness seems to be there. But can there be? Yes. How? Think of a hall of mirrors. You enter there, and every mirror is now reflecting your image. And there are now thousands and thousands of you, depending on how many mirrors are there. When I was a kid, I had seen a movie where there was a big mirror with hundreds and thousands of small mirrors, and one person was now getting reflected at hundreds and thousands, just like that. Here we are talking about reflection, and it's about imagination. It's all same. What Gaudapada is telling, what Mandukya Karika is discussing here is from the aspect of spiritual truth, spiritual experience. He explained whatever he had to. Being a sage, he will also tell you what is the ultimate truth. The ultimate truth is the Lord he imagines. And first thing to come is Jiva. Jiva is that the imagined consciousness. Imagine consciousness, imagine multiplicity of consciousness. Not imagine consciousness, sorry. Imagine the multiplicity of consciousness. And that is what makes me appear different from you and you different from the third person. So we have so many people watching here. We all appear different. Why? Because there is apparent difference in consciousness. Actually, there is none. And this is what we will see as we proceed. First thing is the infinite starts imagining. The infinite now appears as infinite points of consciousness. Is it something real? No, not at all real. Or you can think of a light bulb and you put a board there and to cover it completely, and the board has hundreds and thousands of holes of different size. Now, what happens? The light streaming out from there will appear to be so many. Is there any difference? No, there is no difference. You just hold on, supposing think of yourself as one of those points coming out. Sorry, one of those rays coming out. Just travel back, cross that board. Of course, the nature of board is such, it won't let you pass through because that's the wall of the mind. But if you can, you suddenly realize, oh God, you are never different from the actual source of light, and you are that source of light, and everything that is appearing outside, they are all you only. This is the best example that I can give you. And this is what happens. I appear different from you. And this difference is extremely real because it is in the world of mind. But if you can somehow retrace your steps, go back to the source, you will realize that you are the source and you are never different from the source. And no one who is appearing outside is different from the source. Yet, on that part, they are all different. So it says, once that jiva has been imagined, the jiva start imagining two different sets of things. One is the external. The external imagination is in the form of five sense objects: Shabda, Sparsa, Rupa, Ras, Gandha. The objects with five characteristics of taste, smell, sight, etc. And it also creates the instruments to grasp those things, and they are known as organs. And we have five sense organs. Since we have five sense organs, we have five sense objects. Supposing we had a sixth organ, there would have been a sixth object. So, in that case, would our scriptures change? No, they won't change because the principle remains the same. The jiva, the pure consciousness, first it creates the internal and external. Actually, not first, second, they are simultaneously created. And then the game begins. And how does this game begin? Acharya Shankar here has given very beautifully, and I'll see if we can do something about it next time. Says the Jeev, it experiences certain things with the help of its sense organs, and that becomes knowledge because it has experienced. And that knowledge goes and becomes memory. And that memory now, it becomes a state of knowledge that pushes that entire thing forward, which differentiates into action, actor, and effect. That again brings in fresh knowledge, and now the cycle is on. Acharya Shankar has very beautifully says that, say for example, when you eat something, think, you eat something. Once you eat something, certain things happen because the senses are involved. You feel sated. Now, memory is there. I had taken this food, and so I felt satisfied. Now, next time when you are feeling hungry, you go for the same thing. And supposing somebody applies trick, it happens. It sometimes often, sometimes happen. You had some experience the first time. When you go the second time, you don't have the same experience. Now, it so happens with us that we experience something, and that experience creates a state of knowledge which says that next time I need something, I need to do the same thing. And now has come a situation for performing something. And now the game is on because now you perform and it will form a memory. Because it forms a memory, it will break into three. I become the doer, actor. Eating becomes the action. And to get satisfied becomes the effect. And once I get sated or I become dissatisfied, it will add to some memory. And that memory will now act. And now the game of the world is on. How the game of world gets on? Through this process. First, the Lord creates this jiva. Jiva has the power to think. It has the power to act. Its consciousness, all powerful. It creates the game of the world. How? In the form of subject and object. Subject is the senses. Object is the sense objects. It grabs. It gets some experiences. Once it gets some experiences, that becomes memory. Now, memory impels or memory goads these senses to perform accordingly. The game is on. And when we have lived for millions and billions of births, we have completely forgotten who we are. Now we are impelled and sometimes compelled, sometimes goaded by these memories. And these memories have come only through our knowledge. Yatha vidyas tatha smriti. If you could remember this, remember. If you start studying scriptures a lot, if you start dwelling on scriptures a lot, your knowledge becomes different. Similarly, once you start getting pain in life from your beloved, your memory now becomes different. And once your memory becomes different, you like to be different. You want to move away from there. Aldous Huxley, the famous writer, he wrote a wonderful book, Brave New World. Aldous Huxley was extremely impressed by the Indian system of thought, and he was also extremely disillusioned by Christianity. Now, in the Brave New World, he came up with this concept of Varna, where talks about there will be some souls, and entire thing is artificial insemination. And the big boss, he since the very birth, the workers, the employees who develop into workers, just like, say, honeybees. They are given electric shock every time they touch, say, flowers or anything, anything that has some aesthetic value. So they become such that the moment they see a flower, they move away from that. Just like that, things that attract you, once you get big shock from them, your memory will change. And this is what happens. We have become such a bundle of memory, and we get impelled in the form of, we want to avoid, sometimes we want to seek. We don't even realize that the whole game began a long time ago when the Lord created this universe where I got created. Not even our, not that we willed, not that we wanted. And after that, the game goes on. The game goes on, the process same. The senses experience something, that experience becomes knowledge, knowledge becomes memory. And next time, when same situation takes place, the memory pushes the idea up and we go for it. We'll continue with this. Thank you so much.